Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take a stack of sources, unpack them, and hopefully get you well-informed, fast, on topics that really matter. And today, we're diving into something pretty extraordinary. A military operation that was, well, audacious is maybe putting it mildly. A recent drone attack that reached deep, really deep, inside Russia. We've got quite the range of sources. News reports from the Kyiv Independent, Al Jazeera, AP, NPR, also analyses from think tanks like SIPA, the Modern War Institute.
And importantly, insights from U.S. military leaders reacting to this very event.
Yeah, that's key.
So our mission really is to understand how this attack, codenamed Spiderweb, was even possible. What was the method?
Right.
And then what was the real impact on Russia, on their strategic assets? And maybe the biggest question, what does this teach us about modern warfare? What are the lessons here, especially for, say, the U.S. military?
Exactly. And believe me, this is where it gets genuinely fascinating.
Yeah.
Because the way this went down, it's not your typical strike. So let's unpack the operation itself. Spiderweb. Sources say it was a coordinated drone attack, hit multiple Russian air bases, all on June 1st, 2025.
Coordinated is one thing, but the locations. These weren't border skirmishes. We're talking bases thousands of miles inside Russia.
Like Kulaka.
Well, Belaya Air Base in Irkutsk Oblast, that's over 4,000 kilometers, about 2,500 miles from Ukraine.
2,500 miles. Deep.
And also Alenia up in Murmansk, Diaghilev and Ryazan Ivanovo. Multiple strategic locations hit near simultaneously.
Okay, hitting something 4,000 kilometers away. That alone is remarkable.
Yeah.
But planning that kind of coordinated strike across such distances, how did they manage the logistics?
Well, the sources say this took a year and a half to plan, gives you a sense of the effort involved.
A year and a half. Wow.
And the method described is, well, pretty ingenious. Instead of trying to fly these drones thousands of kilometers from Ukraine, which is incredibly risky.
Yeah, defenses would surely pick those up eventually.
Right. So instead, they transported the drones into Russia first. The sources talk about using first-person view drones, FPV drones.
The ones where the operator wears goggles, sees what the drone sees?
Exactly those. And they hid them under the roofs of mobile wooden cabins, like little sheds loaded onto trucks.
Hidden on trucks, driving around Russia.
Pretty much. Then, at the right time, boom. The cabin roofs open remotely, and the drones launch for their final, relatively short flight to the target air bases.
That's incredible. Almost like Trojan horses, but with drones.
Sort of, yeah. And get this, one source mentions a warehouse near the Kazakhstan border used for logistics. Apparently, it was right next door to a local FSB headquarters.
Russia's security service. You're kidding. Nope.
Operating literally under the adversary's nose. The sheer audacity is something else.
And they use a lot of drones.
Reportedly, 117 drones, which implies, a fair number of operators involved inside Russia, too.
Did Russia acknowledge this?
They confirmed some attacks, yes. Governors in Irkutsk and Murmansk talked about drone strikes causing fires. The defense ministry called it a terrorist attack, but downplayed the damage, as you'd expect.
And Ukraine.
President Zelensky and the head of the SBU, Vasyl Maluk, reportedly oversaw it. Zelensky apparently called it brilliant, said Russia suffered significant losses, adding they were entirely justified and deserved. Strong words. So, what were these drones actually hitting so deep inside Russia?
Good question. What was the prize?
High-value stuff. Russian strategic aircraft. We're talking the big bombers, Tu-95s, Tu-22M3s, Tu-160s, the planes Russia uses to launch long-range missiles against Ukraine.
The ones responsible for those nightly barrages we hear about.
Exactly. Described as the backbone of those assaults. And sources emphasize these are, in the short to medium term anyway, pretty much irreplaceable assets.
Irreplaceable? Why? Just old tech or?
Partly age, partly complexity, partly sanctions limiting new production or parts. And critically, they also targeted the A-50 aircraft. Those are the airborne early warning and control planes, like Russia's version of AWACS, vital for coordinating attacks.
Okay, so hitting those is a big deal. What did Ukraine claim damage-wise?
Their claims were huge. Over 40 aircraft hit, maybe $7 billion in damages, and knocking out, they said, 34% of the cruise missile carriers at those key bases.
34% is massive. Did Russia confirm anything near that?
No, Russia confirmed fires, but much lower numbers. But independent analysis using satellite imagery backed up significant damage. At just 2 of the bases, they confirmed at least 13 planes damaged or destroyed.
Which ones?
8 Tu-95s, 4 Tu-22Ms, and an An-12 transport plane. So even the confirmed minimum is a serious blow to their strategic aviation.
Definitely. That puts the strategy into perspective.
Yeah, the sources highlight this principle. Hit the archer, not the arrow, instead of just trying to shoot down every incoming missile.
Go after the plane launching it. Makes sense.
Directly reduces their capacity to launch future strikes.
Some reports went further, didn't they? Saying this shattered Russia's image as a nuclear superpower. Is that overstating it?
Well, it certainly exposed major vulnerabilities in the air component of their nuclear triad, the bombers. But the sources are careful. The overall triad with the ICBMs and submarines is still functional.
Okay, so maybe dented rather than shattered.
Perhaps. But losing these specific valuable bombers definitely limits Russia's ability to project conventional power long range. It forces them to reallocate resources, maybe rely more on those other legs of the triad, and replacing these planes, very tough. Production lines for some are long gone, new ones like the Tu-160M are expensive, and sanctions bite hard on advanced components.
This whole operation really throws the spotlight onto drone warfare again, doesn't it? The sources call it part of the ever-evolving world of drones, highlighting their outsized and growing role.
Absolutely, and that tactic, concealing drones inside Russia, launching them close to targets, it shows how easily you can bypass traditional air defenses that are looking for threats coming from the border, not from within.
It's the asymmetry that's striking, too. That's a recurring theme in the sources.
Huge theme. You're using relatively cheap FPV drones, some potentially just adapted commercial models, to take out assets worth millions, maybe billions.
One source said it flips the cost curve.
Completely flips it. For Ukraine, that's an enormous win in terms of cost effectiveness. A tremendous victory, as one analysis put it.
Some compared it to Pearl Harbor. That seems bold.
Yeah, the comparison was about the element of surprise and hitting high-value assets in a place thought secure, especially against a nation supposedly on high alert. Others drew parallels to Ukraine's successes against the Black Sea Fleet again, using innovative asymmetric tactics.
And this isn't just about this one attack, right? The sources talk about Ukraine's wider drone strategy.
Right. They mention Ukraine's grown domestic drone manufacturing, which is important. But what really stands out is their use of frontline drone workshops.
Workshops near the front. What do they do?
They're not just for fixing broken drones. The sources describe them as real hubs of innovation. They're using 3D printers to make custom parts, rapidly adapting drones to deal with Russian electronic warfare jamming.
So they see a new jamming technique, and they can tweak the drone design almost immediately.
Sometimes within hours, apparently. They're also figuring out how to strap different kinds of munitions onto drones. It's this decentralized, super agile model, sometimes even operating out of mobile vans.
Adapting in hours, not months or years, like traditional military procurement. That's a huge advantage.
Massive, especially on today's fast-moving battlefields.
Okay, so let's pivot to the implications. What does this mean for Russia, first off?
Well, embarrassment aside, it exposed some serious glaring flaws in their airbase security. The lack of hardened, reinforced hangars for these super valuable aircraft is a big one.
You'd think strategic bombers would be better protected.
You would. And the sources mention even Russian military bloggers were criticizing the situation, apparently mocking things like just throwing old tires on top of planes as some kind of protection against drones.
Tires? Really?
Apparently so. So what's the likely response? Sources anticipate Russia will have to pour resources into better air-based defenses, more SAM systems, specifically for point defense. Maybe they'll finally invest in those hardened shelters.
Makes sense. Anything else?
They'll likely try to accelerate the modernization of their remaining bombers, though again, sanctions make that tricky. We might see them increase patrols in neutral airspace just to project strength, or maybe shift even more reliant onto their ICBMs and nuclear subs.
Interesting timing, too, wasn't it? Just before peace talks.
Yeah, planned talks in Istanbul. Sources suggested that while this attack was a big morale and political win for Ukraine, it probably wouldn't fundamentally change the negotiation dynamics.
Why not?
Because neither side seemed ready to budge on their core demands. Both might still be looking towards, say, the U.S. president as a potential mediator down the line. The fundamental positions haven't really shifted, despite this strike.
Okay, and what about the West? NATO, the U.S.?
Well, immediate reactions noted in the sources included NATO increasing air patrols on the eastern flank, the U.S. deploying more Patriot missile systems to Europe, standard defensive posture adjustments.
Any worries about escalation?
Analysts always mention escalation risks with strikes inside Russia, but the general read was that NATO's focus remained firmly on bolstering its own defenses, not direct confrontation.
But here's a really crucial part the sources highlight. The U.S. Army is watching this very closely.
Yes, this is key. They see this attack and Ukraine's drone warfare in general as direct validation for some pretty radical changes they need to make.
Radical how?
Army Chief of Staff General Randy George basically said the traditional way the military plans and buys equipment, these slow multi-year POM cycles, is old thinking.
Because the tech changes too fast.
Exactly. He stressed the need for speed, agility, rapid development, and getting tech, especially stuff already available commercially, into soldiers' hands now, not years from now.
That's a big shift from traditional defense bureaucracy.
Huge. And the Army Secretary, Daniel Driscoll, echoed this. He called the Army the Pentagon's innovation engine, aiming to quickly test and field commercial tech. He even mentioned cutting $3 billion from other programs to free up funds for these more agile capabilities.
Cutting existing programs. That shows real intent to change.
It does. It shows they're serious about reforming those bureaucratic processes and shifting resources based on what's happening now. And that lesson about the cost curve, cheap drones, expensive assets, U.S. military leaders are explicitly talking about that and incorporating it.
So it really reinforces that idea from some sources. Maybe the West should be learning from Ukraine, not just slowly sending aid.
It certainly suggests that. Ukrainians have shown this incredible knack for developing effective, cheap solutions incredibly quickly. Perhaps supporting that innovation directly is a powerful strategy in itself.
So wrapping this up, what's the big picture from this Spiderweb deep dive? It feels like more than just one successful mission.
Oh, definitely. It wasn't just tactical, it was a strategic tremor, really. It exposed vulnerabilities deep inside a major power and just hammered home how transformative drone warfare, especially asymmetric warfare, has become.
It's forcing Russia to seriously rethink its defenses, its vulnerabilities.
No doubt. And for the U.S., for NATO, for other Western militaries, it's providing urgent, real-world lessons.
Lessons about needing to be faster, more innovative.
Absolutely. The critical need for agility, for rapid innovation, and for finding ways to break through those old, slow procurement habits that just can't keep up anymore.
The battlefield is changing so fast.
At incredible speed. And this attack is just another stark reminder that adapting at the speed of technology isn't just nice to have, it's paramount. It's essential.
So as you think about all this, the audacity, the attack, the flipped cost curve, the lessons for huge militaries, what's the one thing that stands out most to you? What makes you think differently about where warfare is headed? Something for all of us to ponder, I suppose, as these changes keep unfolding.